with Miss Ahmed on the transportation, but the part of the transportation that concerns me more than anything is more on the conditions by which our maintenance staff, our garage people, I would like to see more of a focus on some funding to improve the conditions by which our maintenance people that work on our buses, redoing those garages, bringing that up to date. I think we talked about these years ago, and for some reason we haven't been able to budget that money to move forward on bringing those the garages and those facilities up to par. I don't know if that's from another streaming source. I think our chief financial officers will let us know that, but I think we need to be able to put some focus on that. I think we're going to have a bad winter, and the thought of having our people out there in the cold having to work on those buses that need to be in tip-top shape when they transporting our students, I think is a priority for us. And my other priority would be definitely how do we extend some of our CTE programs. I think we need to look at how we can actually make sure that when our students graduate from high school, we want them to be college ready. We want them to be able to go to college, even if they're focusing on a career to help them get there. I think we need to focus on how to have them to be gainfully or be able to be gainfully employed if they choose to go in another direction of it in college or postpone college for a year or two. So I think how we can expand some of those existing programs instead of making them just a 3-year or 2-year program. Some of them I think we should be able to extend to maybe a 3 or 4 year program. Yeah. My final one is community schools. I think, I know we got a pilot going this year. I would like to see what that pilot, how is that working in that school? Even if we can't focus additional funding this year for that, I think there's something that we need to keep on our radar because I think it's a great opportunity for us to get into making sure that we're looking at the whole total child, especially around the mental health piece. And that to me will encompass that safety piece that we're also looking at because we're able to reach our students before they reach a certain stage. I think that would be beneficial. So those are my top priorities that I would like to see.
Thank you, Ms. Boston. I know the CFO wanted to chime in real quickly.
Yeah, so it was on the specific point around the facilities for the transportation staff. And in terms of like larger scale projects to update the facilities, that would likely come out of the CIP, but the regular maintenance of those facilities would be through the operating budget.
And also, Ms. Boston, I believe last year's FY19 budget started the Community Schools Initiative after the board passed the policy. That was to just start the office. And I think this year with Dr. Talley leading up that initiative, the steering committee is being formed now. I believe we're going to meet sometime in mid-December. And then this upcoming fiscal year is when the pilot programs will officially begin once we lay out the blueprint of what they look like and get external feedback on administrative procedures and how we roll that out. Then there'll be an application process. How the administration recommends that is funded for the next year, we'll see in the next couple of days when Dr. Golson's proposed budget comes out to the board. Colleagues, any more thoughts on going to round 2? All right, so I'll give mine. What I'm always keenly focused on are the recommendations of committee chairs. I know they come with a lot of deliberation from their committees, whether it was through an official meeting or through conversations of members of that specific committee. I see here Ms. Boston as the chair of the School Family and Community Engagement Committee. Her singular recommendation for our budget priority was community schools Dr. Wiseman, through the Policy, Legal, and Legislative Committee, had 4 recommendations. One, to focus on the Educational Equity Task Force recommendations. Folks will recall that last year the board and administration went on a year-long research binge, I would say, and worked on a slate of about 30 recommendations to increase educational equity throughout Prince George's County based off of socioeconomic, language barrier, and special education barriers for students. We had several presentations on the Educational Equity Task Force recommendations. She also recommended some looking into the summer school tuition and how that can be distributed equitably as well. Suspensions was also mentioned. I believe this was an initiative of student board member Amanya Page. I'm interested to see what that fiscal note is and how that relates to our budget, but I know there is some discussion on the policy committee about that, and also some review and updates to any policies that may have a fiscal note. Are we requiring the CEO or superintendent to do something through the board's budget? Our next committee chair was Ms. Quinteros Grady, through the Student Affairs, Achievement, and Equity Committee, previously known as Academic Achievement, looking at, as committee member Williams said, counselors and extending their time of operation, math interventions, community schools again, so now we have 2 committees recommending community schools, restorative practice, and looking at our suspension rates. There's that suspension mentioned again, just like in the policy committee, and the expansion of full-day full-day kindergarten for the Student Affairs, Academic, and Achievement Committee. I believe we have full-day kindergarten, pre-kindergarten, just making sure. Okay. Committee members, any thoughts on what our other committees have recommended?
The summer school tuition, I think that's something that we talked about. We're waiting for a recommendation to come back from the CEO on that. I don't know what that fiscal note would look like and how that would affect our budget, but I think there were some suggestions thrown out there, and she was supposed to come back. So I don't know if that would be able to be absorbed in the present budget, or is this something she's looking at for in the long term? I'm not sure.
Yeah, so that is a discussion we've been having, and something that as part of her budget presentation will be presented. Any potential changes she might recommend in the rates, and if there are decreases in tuition that would have a fiscal impact overall, but it's relatively minor.
Yeah, okay. I figured it would be. Suspensions, how would, I'm not sure what fiscal note would be attached to suspensions, reducing suspensions.
I believe that could be tied in with the board initiative. I believe 2 budgets ago, about restorative justice and restorative practices and how we can lower the suspension rates and expulsion rates of our students. I know there was initiative of many board members to look at the disproportionate statistics that linger with our suspension and expulsion rates within the county, particularly to students of color, students of disability, and students of limited English proficiency.
So would that require us, as far as a fiscal note, to hire, would it come with FTEs, or I'm not sure. I don't see the relationship with the suspensions and the budget.
At this point, I'm not really able to comment on that. I'm not sure exactly how that would be linked right now.
Perhaps, Ms. Boston, it could be expansion of the work that administration is doing around restorative justice training with our secondary schools, maybe going into more schools and expanding, maybe hiring another FTE or 2 to do more training at our schools and our staff meetings. On the school level, perhaps it's professional development and de-escalation technique.
Well, I would like to see the CEO and maybe the the CFO to come back with how that would affect the budget. What would be entailed? I mean, training professional development training is, I can understand that. But I'm curious about that.
Might I suggest that we maybe get some clarity from this committee to see what their expectation is, to see if there is a fiscal impact on it. Their expectation of suspension may not require a fiscal impact if it's just, you know, some, to do something within the school. It may or may not require. I think that we would, if they can provide some additional information on suspensions so that we can understand what their expectation is.
And if
And
I
if it's just exploratory.
I believe that conversation from the committee started with student member Imanya Page about high school suspensions. I think it was around uniforms and principals. There's not being a singular focus on how the suspensions of being out of uniform applies to all of our high schools. If I could relate it, that policy has since changed.
Yeah. So a policy change may not have
have a
a
fiscal.
fiscal impact. Excuse me. If we're talking about looking at how to reduce the number of suspensions by doing something different, that's one thing. But if we're talking about creating a program that will either provide students, excuse me, or administrators with more support, then that may be an impact.
I can probably see a tie between the policies committee's recommendation on suspensions to the student affairs committee's recommendation around restorative practices and looking at our suspension rates. So perhaps, and I know the restorative practice initiative does have a fiscal note of some sort. What that looks like, I am not sure, but I'm sure the committee can flush that out some more.
No, I'm just thinking, can some of the points that we're mentioning here be consolidated under one term? Like, can we say academic achievement and that includes some of these things that we're talking about? Because if we have 5 priorities, one of them is compensation, one of them is maintenance, but we've mentioned other things like counselors, college and career readiness, and I think all of those things are important. I'm just trying to figure out in what way can we communicate that to administration that is very clear what we want to achieve as the end goal, and how does that fit in with the specific terms that we use. So maybe, Chief Herbstman, can you elaborate on what would be good for us to, how should we phrase this to administration that it comes off as, okay, we know this is the priority?
Sure, and I think you all have started to kind of phrase it in that way. If we could get like a very clear list, that I think that the priorities do kind of lean in a few directions that have already been mentioned. If we get a list from this group of what those are that you'd like us to focus on, and if, for example, one of them is the suspensions area, that's somewhere where we could go back to the team, talk more about what would it take to reduce suspensions overall. Are those things that can be done through our normal practices, through changes in conversations, or are these things that actually do need to be written into the budget? I think what we're looking for is those high-level priorities, and then we could come back with recommendations in this budget on how to implement those priorities. So I think to answer your question, I think the original idea of coming up with a list of around 5 major priorities would be very helpful to us.
And then, Chairman Wallace, do you have any thoughts on what those could be beyond the couple that we've mentioned?
So I'm trying to lump them together.
Yeah.
I know I don't want to be too forward. I think the number one, I'm writing them down here, scratching out, trying to reorganize them. Number one is going to be workers' compensation. I think the board can be kind of singularly focus on that being our number one priority for all of our workers, not just one or two factions. I'm trying to give specific weight to committees. I know that the chair people, the chairpersons, are very diligent in the work and engagement of their committee members. And I have two standing committees that are recommending community schools. So I think that should be up there. Now, whether that is a singular pillar or is that within academic achievement, and then we can lump in the equity task force recommendations under academic achievement, and then you kind of kill two birds with one stone. Perhaps we look at maintenance as probably the either the second or the third major pillar. I don't have a committee that is recommending that, but I do have three of the five, and I'm sure even those who did not submit recommendations for their individual service on this board, I'm sure they can agree that our maintenance backlog is something that looms over this system in a very negative way. So I would recommend that in some form or fashion in our top five. If you want to, talk it out with the committee.
I would agree.
I agree. The only thing that I would add is that we need to be very clear and focused in our ask, and to have not only the budget impact in mind, but also an expectation of what we do with that budget. So let's say, for example, if suspensions or restorative practice is something that we want to have a budget priority around, what does that look like? So are we saying that if our suspension rate is, 65% of students that are African American are suspended, just saying restorative practice or reducing the suspensions, that isn't clear enough for us to say at the end of the fiscal year, did we meet that goal? So when we're talking about our focus on these priorities, what is the expected outcome? Not just what we want to spend, but what is the expected outcome that will help us move in the direction of positive change? So we just need to be clear on it. And I don't know if we have enough time to really look in to dive a little deeper, but from a staff perspective, I think we shortchanged them to say, go do something with restorative practice, and then they come back and say, well, we will allocate X amount of dollars. Okay, but what are we going to get with that? That I think as a board, and leading and pointing the board in the direction that we need to go, we should be a little bit clearer on the expectation.
If I could add to what Ms. Williams is saying, I think a lot of what you were saying was resonating with me, and it made me think of Chief Herbstman, when a budget comes to us, and when I see it, what I'd like to see is, okay, these are the board's priorities. We're doing additionally XYZ amount to achieve XYZ goal. And it's not necessarily, okay, this is what we have in our budget, and this is how we're explaining how we're using this budget under these 3 or 5 priorities, but what else are we doing that's showing that, hey, we prioritize this, and we're going to work towards achieving a goal in this area. Is that kind of the same lines of what you're thinking, Ms. Williams?
Exactly. It sort of follows up on what we talked about last year in looking forward to this budget. There are certain expectations that we're looking to see that's different, and I know that Dr. Golson is changing the format slightly. But one of the things that we talked about is that when we look at that budget book, we should be able to associate an outcome in that department that this budget is going to affect. And so, so that really it's about at the end of the year, not just spending $2 billion. It's about spending $2 billion with the increase that we're getting to see us moving in a direction of change in a positive manner. So, but in order for us to do that, you have the overall operating responsibility. But if we're setting priorities as a board, then we should be giving them our expectation because it's our thought, not their thought. You see what I'm saying? Even though our overall goal is to educate students, if we're talking about making this as a priority, our thought as a board is to expect this outcome.
If I may add, Ms. Williams, as you're speaking, things are coming to my head. I think as I'm looking at this, and as you said, our business is, or our goal is to educate children. And so I think one of our priorities here should be to make sure that as much as possible, resources are in the classroom. So I don't know whether or not, I think that could be stated as a priority to say, we want to be sure that we are maximizing the resources that are going to the classroom or directly affecting a student. And that may help with a lot of these other, or may encompass a lot of these other points that we've mentioned today.
I think that's a great point that she's making. But I just sort of caution the terms used such as maximize. And in order to say we're maximizing it, we have to understand what that means. How do we quantify it? So if we say that last year we spent, 70% of our dollars went to the classroom and 30% of our dollars went to administration, then when you say maximize, that first says what we're doing isn't maximum. So is that 80%, 20? So what does that look like so that we can confirm that that has occurred? And I think to say we want to push more into the schools, into the classrooms to directly affect students, then what is more? More is more than what we did last year. So we need to know what was last year. So I think that is something that I think we should spend some time looking at massaging this year with Dr. Golson, because that is her focus. Push money into the schools, into the classrooms, directly affecting students. And let's keep moving in that direction. So whatever she has this year, we can say, is that enough? Is it not enough? What more would we like to see? And even pushing more into the classrooms, what outcome is that? What does that look like? Because we will never be able to put 100% of our money just into the classrooms because we have to transport them, we have to feed kids, we have to house students. So there's a certain part that will always stay outside of the direct classroom per se. But let's make sure that we have as much money as possible to go into the classrooms. And maybe we look at some of the most successful LEAs and see how we compare to them, to see if we are matching them or if we can move, you know what I'm saying, so that we can have some kind of basis for our argument. I think that would be, I would love to have that as one of our Student Affairs and Achievement and Equity Committee topics,
And
to do some comparison.
Yeah.
I think that would be good.
I appreciate that, Ms. Williams. And I'll just be crystal clear. When I say that, I mean the priority for me, as I see it, is decreasing central office and increasing school-based employees and resources. That's in my head when I'm saying that. That's what it translates to.
I'm still on that path. I'm still on that path. Okay. Well, look, thank you, committee members, for that fruitful discussion. It gave me some time to kind of follow Ms. Ahmed's recommendation of consolidating. Right. So right now, at the moment, we're doing the top 5, right? So I still have workers' compensation at number 1. Right now, I have number 2 as operations, and under operations, I have maintenance, transportation, and I just reminded myself of the Maryland State recommendation requirement around school safety, and so that has to be something that we fund over the next 2 fiscal years, according to state law. So that's under the pillar of operations, maintenance, transportation, and school safety. And then I have wraparound student services, which would encompass community schools, the committee recommendation around secondary school counselors, the extension of the work schedule, as well as the restorative justice, suspension, and expulsion rate reduction. And so that kind of knocks out 2 of the 5 that we were originally recommend.
That title again,
Wraparound student services. So that's community schools, restorative justice practices, and secondary schools, counselors, like the extension of their work schedule. And then you have the recommendation, the Equity Task Force recommendations coming in at number 4. Yeah, the Equity Task Force recommendations. I believe there was a 4-year projection of the work of the recommendations, and the first year was actually you remind me, Ms. Boston, because you started on that task force. The first 2 years were kind of administrative focus and board policy focused, but I think the first year was the establishment of an office to center around equity, inclusion, and diversity, much more than what we have now, in just a diversity office.
I think that's good, Mr. Wallace. I think that's a solid 4.
All right, Ms. Berkeley, could you repeat?
Can I
I'm
ask
sorry.
a couple of clarifying questions?
Absolutely.
For the operations, where you said maintenance, transportation, and school safety, when we talk about the transportation piece of this, is that specific, the transportation buildings, or is that overall transportation?
Or around transportation facilities, and that, we put money every year in transportation as far as bus drivers. We still have a whole lot of FTEs that's just sitting out there that we can't fill. So I would, until we fill those, I wouldn't want to put any more money into hiring the transportations, but the facilities itself, I believe, is what we need to put some money into.
I would add to that and say the technology around transportation as well that we have been using and that we're hoping to use moving forward.
Thank you. And then on the first one, workers' compensation, I wonder if we could just rephrase this so it doesn't get confused with the benefit for employees that are disabled during work. We could call it something along the lines of employee compensation. Thank you.
That's perfectly fine.
So I have number 1, employee compensation. I have number 2, operations, to include maintenance, transportation, and school safety. I have number 3 as wraparound student services, to include restorative justice, community schools, and extended school counselors. I have as number 4, equity task force recommendations.
Committee members, does that sound all right? All right, can I have a motion to put that full slate of the 4 recommendations before the committee? It's been moved by Committee Member Boston, second by Committee Member Williams. All those in favor of the slate of 4 recommendations, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Thank you all. We have a full slate, and we're going to send that over to the administration, and we look forward to the CEO's budget presentation.
Point of clarification. That vote was to move those 4 recommendations to the full board and then to administration?
Yeah,
Okay.
I skipped a step.
Yeah, you did. Okay.
And so that would come to the full board at our next meeting in January, right? January 24th. So that is after our first budget work session. How would that? How we gonna have a work session without recommendations to the full board? We can do a special session. I don't mind.
And you
No,
can,
I think Ms. Boston's referring to an addition to the agenda.
Yeah, we just have to. We can two ways. I think you can do a committee of the whole tonight, and we move it today, and then we just amend the agenda at tonight's meeting. That way, we have we're gonna do first and second read. So you got to do suspend the rules, and then just vote twice. I'm sorry. If it's a recommendation from a full standing committee, it only has to go through one time, so on second reader. So we just have to talk to board leadership to add that to the agenda today. Emergency item.
But because we don't have a meeting in December, and it'd be well into January, before you could get to these, and I think they should be, yeah.
Okay, so if we could send that as an urgent note to board leadership and the board executive director, that'd be great. Please.
and the ask is for to,
To have the full board consider and approve the slate of 4 recommendations from the Budget and Operations Committee for the FY 2020 budget to then be sent to the CEO before her budget presentation.
but for tonight, I think that's for tonight.
For tonight, on tonight's meeting, full public board meeting
Okay.
agenda, to have the board vote on, to confirm these 4 recommendations as an emergency item.
Okay.
So they can then be sent to the administration.
Okay.
Thank you, committee members. Speaking of January 22nd, we're moving on to discussion item 2.02, which is the discussion of locations for the FY 2020 budget work sessions and public hearings. A reminder to the public, those meetings will be held on January 22nd, January 29th, and February 5th of 2019. Now, typically, in the past couple of years, in the past 3 years, we have had these 3 budget work sessions and public hearings in strategically, geographically diverse areas throughout Prince George's County. And in all cases, they have been at high schools, because the high schools have larger auditorium spaces where they can accommodate not only the attendance, but the setup for the board and administration, as well as the technology needed to record and, I believe, live stream, in some cases, the work sessions and public hearings. So given that note, and given our hope to be geographically diverse, I'll open up the floor to committee members to present some ideas on where these locations will be. Ms.
Did you
Hammond, I
want to
believe,
present the
from committee leadership?
yeah, what was already suggested, and then go from there, or?
Yeah, let's go. I'll do that. Let me pull it up. Oh, do you have it? Because I got to
I
look
do.
at my emails.
Mhm. The suggestions were for North County, either Roosevelt High School or Duval High School. That would be the North County option. Central County, there was only one suggestion, and that was BOE High School. South County, there was only one suggestion, and that was Friendly High School. I can tell you in 16 and 17, we did Laurel High School both times for the North County option. And, excuse me, in 16, we did Flowers for Central. And 17, we did Central High School for 17. And in South County was Oxon Hill for the past 2 years.
I would like to make a suggestion for the central part to do Fairmont Heights High School.
Could we move the Bowie one to? I know Ms. Am's going to chime in. Move the Bowie one to north. I know it's a tickler of the debate if that's north or central. If you look, on a flat line, they're almost parallel. If you look at Duval and Bowie. No, I take it back. I don't make the vote, so. There's no debate that Fairmont Heights is right in the middle of the county.
No, I would like to make a push for Bowie only because I know that there are a lot of people in my community that would be willing and interested in participating in a conversation around budget. We haven't had it at Bowie before, and Mr. Wallace knows I've been talking about this for a while. So would love to have one of the locations be at Bowie High School.
No, I fully support that. One of them being at Bowie, I think it should be in North County.
Could Bowie be considered North County?
It could.
Yeah.
It could. I mean, it's all for, perspective. I think anything above Route 50 is North County.
I agree. Anything above, Allentown Road is north. So I just want to put a plug in.
Well, I will say I don't think that it's not really north.
It's
Central.
It's southern north.
But it is, if you look at it, Fairmont Heights is west and Bowie is east.
Mm-hmm.
So you got a west, east, south thing going, which
My,
Still
my,
might be okay.
my argument for Fairmont Heights is that you're looking at the central part, when you're looking at the central part, you're looking at parents that may not be able to get to a Bowie, may not be able to get to the southern part. And I think we're limiting their ability to be able to participate in the budget process. And that's the reason why I believe that the Fairmont Heights would be much more available for lower income parents in the central part than the Bowie.
Thank you, Ms. Boston. Colleagues, committee members, are there any discussion around the southern county?
So
Are we
let
okay
me
with
chime
Friendly?
in on the southern part of the county. I think that we're always left out of the discussion, and I understand because it is the traffic pattern, because we're not only contending with Prince George's County traffic to get to, the guys that are going to the championship, Frederick Douglass. We would always welcome you there, or even at one of our newer schools, the newest school in District 9, which is Akakeek Academy, which could accommodate the people and the streaming and things like that. I just want to put that out there, but I understand it is a challenge to get there in the evening. If we were to do a southern county, then I would also recommend changing the date to a weekend, or a Saturday morning or Saturday early, because then we're not contending with the traffic. So I just want to put that out there.
Ms. Williams, is your concern about the traffic, which is a good one to have, logistics is a good one to have, is it for the public or for the administration and board members? Because the public one is at 7 p.m.
Well, the administration, we're down in the 9th district now,
Yeah.
so it would not be a challenge. I'm just concerned about the community making their way down Route 4, Route 5 to 10 during the evening, during the week. There is always traffic there. If we were to do something, this is my recommendation. I recommend that we keep it at Friendly, and then maybe one of our regular board meetings we do at a Frederick Douglass, which is right around the corner, or an Akakeek Academy, so that the community can participate in the work of the board outside of the board room. So I am okay with it being at Friendly High School, because of logistically it would be better for the community. But I'm going to push for us to consider a board meeting outside of Sasser, so that the community can participate.
Well, I love that idea. I wish we didn't have a single board meeting here, where we really went around the county and we made ourselves more accessible as a governing body. But I like your idea around Akakeek Academy. It's a school that I think can accommodate the technology needed. It certainly can accommodate this space. And we've never done any non-high school as a work session. Something to consider. But you are the South County rep on this committee, so if you want to recommend Friendly, we'll go with Friendly. Okay. Okay, colleagues, so right now we have for the northern-ish part of the county. We have Bowie High School, central part of the county, and inside the 495 Beltway, Fairmont Heights High School. And then for the southern end of the county, we have Friendly High School. That sound good to everybody? Okay. Now let's talk about dates. Is there any particular?
Excuse me.
Yes.
So, just to put this out there,
Please.
I happen to know that there is going to be a lot of pushback from the community about having these meetings at District 4 and then District 5, then District 4 school, then District 8 without a true southern, a true northern school being picked for location. Because in the past, we did as a northern location 1 through 3, as a central location districts 4 through 6, and southern 7 through 9.
We've never had that before.
You also have to look at which high school or school can accommodate live streaming. So, we're limited because all of our schools are not equipped to handle that. So sometimes, unless we're gonna constantly keep going back to Laurel, in my opinion. I think Bowie should, that's my opinion. I think Bowie would work fine.
I know we've done Northwestern a few times. I don't believe Parkdale, love the school, but I don't believe they can accommodate the technology at this time. I wish they could.
Duval can. It's a newer auditorium, but I don't think Roosevelt could.
Yeah, but
My suggestion would go with the ones that we suggested, Bowie, Fairmont Heights, and Friendly.
I do think that
Got a motion.
maybe we shouldn't say north, central, south. I think it's more east, west, and south.
you could do that.
We
too.
just list the schools. We going
Just list the
Bowie,
schools.
Fairmont Heights, and Friendly. Mhm.
All right, so now let's talk about the dates. I know that we have the dates established. We have the January Tuesday. Oh, they're all Tuesdays. The 22nd of January, the 29th of January, and the 5th of February. And of course, as in years past, the budget has been broken up into specific categories. I don't have the schedule of categories on each day, but I don't think that
That's
pertains to the
usually
location.
given to us by the administration, and we don't usually get that this early. It's usually given to us after they do the budget presentation.
Understood. And I don't think that would have any implementation on the locations. So is there any preference from the committee on the locations, or did I just go north, central, south, or I guess east, west? Okay. So the 22nd is going to be at Bowie, 29th Fairmont Heights, and the 5th at Friendly. Does that sound good to the committee? Okay, may I have a motion to bring this slate of recommendations before the committee for a full vote? It's been moved by Committee Member Williams, second by Committee Member Boston, to have the FY 2020 budget work sessions and public hearings at Bowie High School on January 22nd, Fairmont Heights High School on January 29th, and Friendly High School on February 5th. All those in favor of this recommendation, please signify by saying aye. All those opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. We have a schedule. Thank you, committee members. Moving on to agenda category number 3, new business next steps. Colleagues, as you know, the Budget and Operations Committee meeting, the third one for November 15th, had to be canceled due to poor weather conditions. And there were some changes that needed to be made in our work plan. So if you look at our 5th meeting, December 11th, We're going to have the external auditor presentation at that meeting, as opposed to it being on the 15th. Today, we were supposed to have a presentation from the administration regarding human resources. But with the shifting of our work plan, Dr. Murphy and her office and the committee would like to reschedule that presentation. So looking at our work plan and our work ahead, now that we are about to dive deeply into our fiscal budget review, is there a particular board meeting where you would like to have Dr. Murphy and her team come back for our, it seems to be our work session. Each standing committee is required to have a work session, and it looks like that's going to be ours. Any thoughts, colleagues?
And you also still have a meeting 6 to be determined date for December. Your second meeting in December, the date is not set yet, so you can use that as well.
Colleagues, I know at our first committee meeting, we wanted to have an additional meeting in December. We could use that as Ms. Berkeley recommended. We could use that as a time to have Dr. Murphy come back for our work session around human resources. Or did you want to include that in our December 11th committee meeting already scheduled?
If we are not looking to use that, to use the focus of the human resources as a budget conversation, then I would recommend that we push it to the April meeting, April 11th meeting. Because I see at the 11th, we're supposed to look at the challenges and opportunities and have an oversight of the budget presentation. And that might take some time.
Oh, it certainly would, and as well as the external auditor's presentation,
yeah.
and that could take the full 90 minutes.
Exactly. So I would just recommend that we move it to the April meeting.
I would be in favor of that as well, taking off my chairman hat. Any other thoughts, colleagues? No, okay. All right, Ms. Williams, you want to recommend that change as a motion?
I move that we move the human resources presentation to the meeting number 10, scheduled for April 11th.
You have a second, please. It's been moved by Ms. Williams, second by Ms. Ammett to move, to reschedule Dr. Murphy and her team for the human resources work session to the April 11th, 2019 committee meeting of the Budget and Operations Committee. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. Thank you very much, colleagues. Now, as always, I'm going to open up the floor to the administration for their thoughts before we close out.
Thank you. Don't have anything prepared, but look forward to presenting the budget, or the CEO presenting the budget over the next couple of weeks, and working with the board throughout that process. And thank you for pushing the priorities. That's very helpful for us if we can get a list before the CEO presents.
Ms. Winston, if you had any thoughts? No. Saving it for the next meeting. Or later today. Yeah. All right. Colleagues, any closing thoughts? All right. Thank you very much. The meeting has been adjourned at 4:16. Thank you, colleagues. I was reminded that I guess I need a motion to adjourn the meeting. I tend to go Russia
Second.
style. So it's been moved and seconded by Ms. Ammon and Ms. Williams to adjourn at 4:17. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any noes? All right, the ayes have it. Now we are adjourned.